The following is a presentation of the Teacher Education Lab, a division of the College of Education at The Ohio State University.
What do children know about reading before they read? What do they understand about books, print, and the writing system? Do they know where to begin to read a book? Do they know to read the print rather than the pictures? Can they follow a text in a left-to-right direction? And can they distinguish letters from words, and individual words from groups of words or sentences? Answers to such questions and others I sought by teachers of young children as they try to learn what knowledge or cueing systems individual children bring to the task of reading. A teacher wants to know what the child understands so that she can link her instruction to his present effort. The concepts of print test, developed by Professor Marie Clay at the University of Auckland, New Zealand, is an effective means of gaining such information. In part 1 of this presentation, Professor Clay will discuss the test, and then she will administer it to two boys, Millard, age 5 years 6 months, and Josh, age 5 years 9 months. If you wish to follow and mark the scoring sheet for the various tasks, Dr. Clay's scoring will be shown at the conclusion of each administration.
I'd just like to explain to you how the little test which I'm going to demonstrate today came about. First of all, it was part of research work which I was doing in New Zealand, and I was following the reading progress of children who enter school on their 5th birthday. So on the whole, it was designed for children who are younger than school entrants in America. They're learning to read basically by a language experience program, followed by shared experiences that they write stories about, and then finally a rather intensive program of book experience where children's literature books are shared with them. And under this scheme, they are prepared well in the language area for their books. We noticed that we were getting some problems in the visual learning area. And so I took one of their little books and I undid the staples and I turned some pictures and print upside down, and I generally played around with this and found I got some good information on children. What I actually had was a discovery situation where the child could show me whether he understood certain concepts about print without him having to tell me in words about this. So we took the idea and devised a test which packaged all these useful little situations in one book sharing experience. And so in this test, I read the book to the child. He doesn't have to read, he doesn't have to be able to read. And yet before he can even read, he can show me that he knows something about print and something about words and what he doesn't know. Now there are three main areas in the test situation. One is, does he know about, does he discriminate between pictures and print? Does he know that it's not the pictures that we're reading the story from, but it's those black marks on the page? And then secondly, what does he know about the direction that we use in an arbitrary way when we write down the English language? Does he know the front from the back and the upside down concepts in relation to a book? Does he normally, do his eyes go to the usual starting position in a top left-hand corner? Does he move from left to right? Does he return back down the line? Or does he, like some children, go left to right across the story and then snake back right to left along the next line? Because that's a very easy way to travel over print, you see. Why should you do it any other way? Only because arbitrarily we write English in that way. First of all, there's the behaviours in relation to direction. Then there's another important set of behaviours in relation to concepts of what is a letter, what is a word. And just to make some difficult items for the really smart kiddies who've learnt an awful lot, we ask them something about some of the punctuation signs. And we find that those who are very acute in observation are picking up information about punctuation just as readily as they're picking up information about letters and words. So there's those concepts. There are other concepts that are important in the instructional situation. For example, when the teacher says to the child or to a group of children, "Now I want you to look at the word I've got on the chalkboard. I want you to look at the first letter of the word." It's all right for those who know what first means and who know that first in printing means the left-hand end of the word. But for many children, they don't know what first and last are anyway. And they certainly don't know that first in a printed situation, particular first, it's first at the left-hand end of a word, you see. So there are some quite tricky concepts to be learnt here. And so we test first and last and bottom and top and so on. And then the third area that the test measures, and this gives it some items that will be fairly discriminating even when children are reading, and will sort out those who are paying attention to the detail of print and those who are really recognising just isolated features of words. And these are the visual discrimination items, which we have made by turning some of the print back to front. The first thing we did was to take a top line and make it a bottom line. And you read the story correctly to the child and see whether, by looking at the print, he recognises that the top line has been placed in the wrong place. So that's just a switch of lines. On the next item in the test, we switch the order of words so that although the test administrator reads "in the sand," whatever the phrase is, the text actually has been twisted around and the text reads "the in sand." So he gets the right message read to him. He sees the wrong message on the print, and we want to know whether he can tell that there is a mistake and what he says about the switch around there. How does he think about that mistake which he's detected? The next difficult thing, and we're going up a very steep set of difficulty in these, we take a word like "in" or "the" and change the letters round so that the first letter doesn't come first or the last letter doesn't come last. And we see whether he can detect those. And then the next item of difficulty is when we switch around not the first or the last letter, which stay the same, but we switch the medial letters in the middle. And that really takes a lot of discrimination to recognise, when the beginning and end of the word is correct, that there is something different about the middle of the word. Now, with children who are not actually responding to words, who don't have one or two words that they can read, they're not going to score on those particularly difficult items of changing letters around. And so we found from experience in using the test that if the child fails on the first two items of the changed around order of things, there's not much point in administering the other two. So these much more difficult ones we can skip over and simply read him the book. The thing I like about this particular exploration exercise, it's designed as a standardized test, and so by and large one should stick to the direction and one should score it, and then one can make comparisons between children. But in addition to that, if a child is having difficulty, for example, in attending to the task, then you can do other things to make sure he is attending to the item. You can give other directions which bring his attention to the thing you want him to respond to. And also, if he gives you an unusual answer, or if he gives you a quick answer and you think that he knows more about that situation, then you can develop your own questions and go a little further and find out what he really knows about it. In other words, it gives you an inquiry situation that you can use with children, and you can find out how they do think about these things. For example, you might, for some reason or other, want to know whether the child takes any notice of the white spaces in between words. Well, you might ask him some question about that would lead into an explanation of this. Now, there is one thing I'd like to suggest here about the inquiry situation, though. The whole little task situation in the concepts about print test is meant to operationalize the child's concepts. In other words, he should be able to demonstrate that he works as if he knows the concepts. He doesn't have to tell you in words the concepts or what the concepts mean. So this is an important thing. He may, in addition, be able to tell you in a verbal sense what is there and what he sees. But as long as he can act as if he understood this in a task situation, this is what we want to know. Finally, I think the important thing for me about the test is that instead of just giving me a score, which tells me, yes, Johnny is at the same level as Mary and Jimmy, they all got the same score on this test. Instead, it tells me that although they got the same score, Johnny doesn't know the difference between a letter and a word, whereas Jimmy has difficulty with the changed around order of things, and Mary hasn't yet mastered the left to right direction. So they may all be the same on the score and more or less at a similar stage, but in fact it tells me the kinds of things I might need to teach each of them next. So it goes directly from the discovery situation to the teaching situation, and that's the kind of thing that we have wanted to develop. Okay, now I'm going to read the book to you, but I need you to help me. You see? Would you put that book down on the desk the right way up for me to read it to you?
That's
Okay.
what I read.
Okay, good. Now we'll open it up, and I want you to show me, where do I start reading? Over there. All right. I took a little spade and I dug a little hole. Okay? Now, show me where to start reading here. And which way do I go? And where do I go after that? Okay, and where do I go after that? Good. I dug a little hole and the waves splashed in. Right? Now, would you point to this story here while I read it? You point, read, okay? I dug a big hole and I piled up the sand. Okay? Now, just have a look at that.
Yeah, unless you got to turn around.
You think so? Well, see if you can do this for me. Show me the bottom of the picture. That's right. It's there, isn't it? What would you say about that picture?
I see the clouds up here.
Yes, we'd have to turn it round to look at it properly, wouldn't we? Mm-hmm. Do you know what you call something when it's round like that? What is it?
Upside down.
Right. Okay. Now, look very carefully at this story here. Now, where do I start reading that story?
I think right here.
Okay, show me. And show me which way I go. And where do I go after that? Okay. The waves splashed into my hole in the sand. Right?
Right.
See what he's doing?
Splashing it.
Now let's have a look at this over here. You look carefully, and I want you to tell me what's wrong with this. Look at it over here. I jumped in the hole and I splashed with my feet. Now what's wrong with this story?
Well, what's wrong with it? It's right side up again. Right side up.
It's not the same as the one over the page, you think? And you think this one's okay? I think there's something wrong with this. You have another look at it and tell me what's wrong with it.
I don't see anything wrong with it.
You don't see anything wrong with it. I see. You had a good look, did you? And you didn't see anything wrong with that one. Okay, we could look at the next page then. Now, on the next page, I want you to tell me where I start reading. Where do I start reading? Point with your finger so I can see just where I start reading. There. All right, that's very good. Now, will you look at it carefully and tell me what's wrong with this page? I sat in the hole and I splashed with my feet.
Wait. How can you send them?
What do you think?
And that's a coincidence. I can't think.
Think about
Well, I can think what it is, but I just don't know.
it. You don't know?
I don't have anything.
No, there's nothing really wrong with the picture. I think it's with the story over here. Shall we have another try?
Mm-hmm.
I sat in the hole and I splashed with my feet. Okay, let me go on with the story then. And you watch and tell me whether you can see anything wrong with this page. You watch carefully, will you? Your eyes watching carefully? I sat in the hole and I wondered, could a boat float here?
No.
Could a whale swim here?
No.
No. Look at this page. Shall I make a hill with a coconut tree and a house for me and a yellow starfish?
I can make a house for him and a coconut tree. I don't understand that.
Now, he was pretending, don't you think?
Yeah.
He found these things and I think he was pretending. Okay? All right. Home time, called Mother. Time to go home, she said. Let's have a look at this over here, and I want you to tell me, what's that for?
It's at the end, so you know it's done.
I see. That's at the end, so you know it's done. Good, fair enough. Now, what's that for? Not so sure about that one? Well, we'll try these ones. What are these ones for?
Oh. See, like you read one and then you jump over to another. Like you're done with this one, then you go to another one.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Yeah.
I think you're close to it there. I think you've got the idea. Okay? Now, what's this funny one for?
I think.
Have you seen that one before?
Yes. But
Can you guess what it's for?
No.
No? Okay. Now, here's a big letter. I want you to find me the little one that's just like that. Now, where is a little one that's just like that? That's very good, Millard. Now, I'll show you. That's another one. Now, where's the little one that's just like that?
That's not it. That's an M.
That's not it. It's an M. Well, where is the one that's just like that?
I'm looking. H.
Good boy. Now, where's the little one that's just like that?
Head.
No, there's lots of them. Okay? On another day, I looked for that hole. All I saw was flat sand, soft sand, wet sand, and waves, but oh, no hole. What had happened to the hole?
Oh, see, when the waves wash up, it pulls the sand back.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and the sand, whatever hole there is, it goes in the thing again.
And that's what happened. When he came back the next day, it had all gone. Now, I want you to have a look at the story that I just read here and see if you can find me the word that says was. Show me was.
I'm looking for a Y, then I can tell. Ooh.
He's certainly looking hard. No?
can't see a was.
Okay. Well,
All I can see in here is a Y.
where's that? Now we're going to turn over to this. I've got a little story here that says, "The waves splashed in the hole." Now I can take my 2 pieces of paper here and I can slide them across that to cover up some of the story, you see? And you can do that quite easily. Now, you cover up the story until all I can see is just one letter. Good boy. Now show me 2 letters. Good work. Now we'll open these right up again. Now this time I want you to cover up the story until all I can see is one word. Have you got just one word? Now show me 2 words. Have you got 2 words? Good. All right, now we'll open them up again, and this time I want you to show me the first letter of a word. Show me the first letter of the word. Is that the first letter? Can you find the last letter of a word? Good work. Now, we'll take the pieces of paper again, and we'll get you to do the last job. Can you find me a capital letter?
Capital
Yes.
T.
Could you cover up all the red till all I can see is the capital letter? Good work.
I guess.
What did you call that?
Capital T.
A capital T. You're quite right. I'll just go back to the story over here a little bit and do one of the things that I forgot about over here. If that's the story, it says I dug a big hole and I piled up the sand. Show me the first part of the story.
First. It's, oh no, that's,
You don't seem to be very sure. Can you be sure?
No.
What is the first part? You choose.
If it's upside down, it has to be that.
Well, it's not upside down, is it? So where's the first part of the story? Oh, well, we'll turn over to another one then. Okay?
Okay.
Now find the first part of that story. Right, and where's the last part of the story? Show me just the last part. That's right. Well, you've been working a long time. I think we're finished and we ought to give, I've forgotten his name.
Josh.
Oh, we have to give Josh a turn now.
You know, I sometimes call him Joshua.
Do you? Good. Can we take the mic off Millard, please? Well, Josh, that's very good. Now, I've got a book here that I want you to help me with. I'm going to read it to you, but I need you to help me. Do you think you can do that? Hey? Can you tell me you can do that? Yes, of course you can. Okay. Now, here's a book, and I want you to put it down on the desk the right way up for me to read it to you. Look at this. Put it down the right way so that I can see the story. Put it down on the desk so we can look at it together. All right? Can you lie it down on the desk so that we can look at it together? Now, is this the right way up for me to read it to you? You have a look at the book. Never mind those people out there. Do you know who they are? They're going to be teachers. And they want to see you and I having a look at this book together. They really want to see what I'm doing, you know. Okay? Now, let's have this book. You put it down on the desk the right way up for me to read it to you. Okay? And then I'll tell you the story, you know. Can you put it down? Now what's going to happen if I open this book here? Look. Is that right? Can I find the story that way?
No, it's
Okay, you
upside
fix it
down.
for me and put it round the right way. You reckon it's that way? Okay. Now, we'll open up the book and I want you to show me where I'm going to start reading. Where will we start reading this story? Point with your finger. Over here? Good. I took a little spade and I dug a little hole. Do you ever dig a hole like that? Hmm? Okay, now let's have a look at the next part of the story, Josh. Can you take this finger here and show me where I start reading that book? Show me where I start reading. And which,
Wait.
there? And which way do I go? And where do I go after that? And after that? Okay. I dug a little hole and the wave splashed in. What? Okay. Now, I want you to point to this story while I read it. Okay, leave the picture for a minute and let's look at the story. Now, you point to all the words while I read them. Where's that finger? Point to the words and I'll read them. Come on. I dug a big hole and I piled up the sand. Okay, that was good work. You're doing a fine job.
6.
That's number 6, right. Now have a look at this picture and think carefully about it, and I want you to show me the bottom of the picture. Where's the... What's wrong with it? Do you know what you call that? When it's
Upside down.
Upside down, of course it is. Right,
And that's right side up.
that's right. And the waves are coming into the hole. Okay, now let's have a look at the story over here. Show me where to start reading that story.
Oh, that's easy.
Show me where to start? I didn't see where you pointed. You were so quick. Now which way do I go?
Oh, this way.
And where do I go after that?
This way.
Okay, and I'll read it to you. The waves splashed into my hole in the sand. Okay? Now, this story, Josh, over here on page 10. See page 10? This one says, I jumped in the hole and I splashed with my feet. Now, you look at it very carefully. I want to see your eyes looking at this story. Now, what's wrong with that story? I jumped in the hole and I splashed with my feet. What's wrong with that story?
You're supposed to splash with his hair.
You think so? But I think it's the story. See if you can find something funny with the way that story is written. I jumped in the hole and I splashed with my feet. Now see if your eyes can find out something funny with that story.
Jumped in the hole.
You think you shouldn't? Okay, we'll try the next page. Where do I start reading here?
Oh,
Up there? Good work. That is where I start, and then I go up there. Now, will you have a look at this page and see if your eyes can find out what's wrong with this story? Look carefully. I sat in the hole and I splashed with my feet. No? Okay. Well, I'll read the story here. I sat in the hole and I wondered, could a boat float here? Could a whale swim here? And then he said, shall I make a hill with a coconut tree and a house for me and a yellow starfish? He was having fun, wasn't he? Okay. Home time, called Mother. Time to go home, she said. Josh, you have a look at this and tell me what's that for?
that's to tell you when you're reading it.
That's to tell you when you're reading it. Does it tell you anything else?
Tells you to stop when you're reading it.
It tells you to stop when you're reading it. Right. What about this one here? What does that tell you?
That tells you it's something exciting.
That tells you what?
Tells you it's something exciting.
It's exciting. Well, I never. Now, what does this one here tell you? You know some good things about this. What's that one tell you?
That's a period to show you. I don't know.
You don't know that one, okay. Well, what about these ones here? These are different. Look at these. They're there, and they're up here. Do you know what they tell you?
Oh, no.
No, okay. Now, see this letter here? That's a big one. Josh, who are you looking at? My book or those people out there? See that big letter there? Can you find me a little one just like that? Where's a little one just like that? Point to it carefully. That one there. Okay, that's the big one, and that's the little one. Now, here's a big letter. I want you to find the little one just like that. Josh, find me the little letter just like that. Where is it? Where's the little one that's like that? Good boy! And a little one that's just like that. Where is it? Oh, I can't see. Show me again. That's it. That's it. Do you know what it's called?
What?
Do you know what that one's called?
M.
M, of course it is. All right.
M.
Look at this story. On another day, I looked for that hole. All I saw was flat sand, soft sand, wet sand, and waves. Oh, no hole. Look at the picture. The hole had gone. Where'd it gone? What happened to the hole?
It dug back up.
It dug back up. Okay. Now look at the story here, and you find me the one that says was. In that story there. Can you point to the one that says was? Good boy. And can you find the one that says no? There was no hole. That says no. Good boy. Okay, last job. Now, there's a little story, and it says, the waves splashed in the hole. And I got some pieces of paper here, and I can slide those over there until I've covered up all the story. See? Now, I want you to do that for me, and I'll tell you what to do. Cover up all the story until all I can see is just one letter. Okay? You cover it up till all I can see is just one letter. Good boy. Now show me two letters. Good work. Open those cards. Take the cards away again. Right. Now this time, cover it up until all we can see is just one word. Show me two words. Good work. Open them up again. Let's see if I can trick you this time. Show me, cover them up until all I can see is just one letter. Just the, no, I'll tell you what I want. I want just the first letter of a word. Just the first letter of a word. Good work. Now can you find just the last letter of a word? Is that the last letter? How do you know?
This way.
That's the last. Now how do you know that's the last letter?
Because that thing there.
What do we call that thing there?
Another letter.
Another letter. Yeah, okay. Now open them up again. And this time I want to know if you can find me a capital letter. A capital letter. What do you think that one is? A capital letter. Well, that's a very good boy. You finished, you know. We can close the book now. Back up. Say thank you very much, but you can't walk away until the man takes the microphone off. Because you're all tied up from the microphone. Okay?
After administering the test, Dr. Clay discussed what had happened with a January 1976 class of EPIC students.
We had two different responses there. We had, I feel, I didn't score them because I find in the filming situation it's difficult to do the scoring and keep the attention and everything too, especially of the second little boy who was determined to pay you more attention than he was me. I think I had two children who were about at the same stage. Neither of them, although I didn't really check them on this, I would say neither of them really is reading. They can each write their name, but they probably have not got much more word control than that. And yet they were passing and failing different items. I don't know whether you could see that. Yeah.
How would you, as a teacher, or what would you suggest to teachers that you would do with the first child that you would not do with the second, or that you would do with the second child and not with the first? You said that the items were different, even though they were at about the same level.
This is where I fall down in not having actually scored them, because I can't remember quite what. But, for example, the very clear difference between them is that the first child has out the difference between a letter and a word, whereas the second child knows it quite clearly. The first child gave me an isolated letter and two letters. He almost gave me one word, but it happened to be splashed, and by the time he got to all but one letter of the word, he decided it was long enough, I think. And so he said that was the word, you see. Now, he was not operating on the space as the definition thing for the word, whereas the second child clearly was. He got the words, and he finished his word and then moved his card a bit further until he got to the space. There was two actions in that, and that's why I got him to try and define the space for me. He was using it, so I tried to get him to verbalize that, and he really couldn't do that, and yet he was operating on the basis of the spaces defining the distinction, the boundary between two words. And he had his concepts of letters within words and so on clearly sorted out, whereas the other child had yet to learn them. But in direct answer to your question, I'm always hesitant to jump in with a lesson which tries to teach that child, the first child, what is a letter and what is a word.
What kind of experiences? I think that's more or less.
Well, he has letters, must. I have here, I mean, you are driving me into a corner. I think a lot about how I would go about teaching him. He has his name here, which he writes in capitals. Now, there we have the embodiment in knowledge which he has of the necessary components. He has there letters within a word, and I think from that known piece of information, rather than from something quite new, I would try and get him to the awareness of the fact that his name is composed of individual letters, and when I only write a few of them, I haven't yet defined his name. So some way like that. But I would work from something that is well within his repertoire. That's something he knows well, rather than try and make the distinction between those two concepts on new material.
Does that mean then in conversation perhaps with that child, when writing his name another time, you might use the language of, do you have all the letters? Or now you've got the whole word for your
Well,
name.
that's the first letter. Now where's the second letter? And so on.
In your language.
And now we've got a whole word. Yes, it could be.
Without really teaching it, just
Right.
using it.
I'd rather have, he discovered it in that way rather than that we made a verbal lesson out of it. Because I think it's an awareness that we want rather than the labeling of it. But unfortunately, we're so incompetent that we nearly always have to teach it by verbal means, you see, rather than creating an awareness. That's much harder to do. I'm trying hard to think of the difference, what other things. Of course, neither of the children are really on the ladder of reoriented print yet. They both have, they both have the left to right directional pattern, but the second boy didn't have it completely under control for the inverted print. I can't remember what the first one did. I think he recognized that the print was upside down, but I can't remember whether he reversed the directional pattern, but I know the second one didn't. And so upside down print and this kind of thing. That might be something that I might work on them with too.
Am I correct that the first child in identifying the first letter and the last letter went to the beginning of the line and the end of the line, and the other child worked with a word within the line? Is that significant?
To me, just on the basis of experience, we don't have any test data on, search data on it. The child who is only just in control of first and last will tend to do the end ones, whereas the child who's really in control of words and letter concepts will do what the second child did. And I think that just reinforces that these children were at two different levels as far as word and letter concepts were concerned. Yes, that is significant in that way. It's the same with the page. The other thing about the concepts about print test, that while it's standard and in most cases it's useful to go through in the same order that it's written, if you do as I do and you forget an item and leave it out, then there's no harm in going back and doing it, which is what I did with the first child. Now, when you ask for first and last on a page of print like this, again, I don't mind whether they give me the first letter or generally this is the first part and this is the last part. It's the general concept of first and last. But the child who's in control of things will be precise in indicating first and last, and the child who's still vague about these things will be more sort of approximating in indicating first and last. Neither of the children had any problem with the bottom of the picture, but some children do. They get quite confused. They don't know what to do with that situation. And neither of them wanted to turn the book round the right way up. Well, I think the first one did verbally, but some of them just can't resist the temptation to swing the book around.
How about the child that was then concerned about the text material on the page where the picture was upside down?
Yes.
The child then to tell you where things began and ended seemed to want to switch that. But
This is where the child
oh,
felt this upside down. I think, no, when I came back to the story, that's right. Yes, I came back and I wanted him to tell me first and last. This was the wrong order of the thing.
and he wanted to take the bottom line, didn't he, as in order to
Okay.
correspond with the picture?
Okay, now he didn't pass this item. So he doesn't realize that the print is upside down. He doesn't have a clear vision of that. Therefore, starting from this is his focus, he can reason if this is upside down, this is upside down.
Okay.
And he can't check it visually, you see? And he's reasoning from one to the other. So he doesn't really want to respond to first and last on this page because he has reasoned, he's assumed that this must be upside down, and that's more confusing, which is why I removed the confusion and went back a page. You see. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yes, the first child, when you asked him to find the word was, I think he was saying, I'm looking for a Y.
Mm-hmm.
What was he dealing with, the sound was?
I think, yes, I think he was, you know, but I think that he was word-oriented yet. So I didn't really believe that he had that discrimination, that he would pick up was. But then neither did I believe the second one would. So you shouldn't make assumptions, because he passed both the word items. He found was and he found no, and he didn't confuse them with the reversed words that are on that page, the ones he could confuse them with. So he obviously has word knowledge. He did very well with the was and no, and very quick too. He didn't have to visually search that page very long. And it's a big page of print, and remember, he can't read that page of print, I'm sure. I should have tried him just to check, but I'm pretty certain he couldn't read that page of print. And yet he could visually scan that and pick out was, and pick out no. And of course, for the no, there are three possible confusions with no, o, and on. And he was quite sure about that. He has some vast experience with word forms of some kind, I think. Yes?
Yeah, the first child was continually searching like the other page when you said to look here.
The pictures? Mhm.
And is that because he's still in pictures?
He's more focused on pictures and he doesn't get enough cues from print to be a source of information for him, whereas the pictures are still a source of information. But in this situation, that is something as a tester you have to be ready for. You have to be ready to observe what the child is attending to, and with your in your conversation with the child, bring him back and make sure he's attending to the critical thing for the item, which is what I was trying to do. With the other one, I was trying to bring his attention from out there down here, because he was very impressed with the people that were watching him. There is one thing about this attention thing that happened when we produced this booklet. The original book was only about this size. And by simply increasing the size of the book, we actually put the print a long way away from the picture, so that really the child can't focus on both at once. And it's almost an either or, and that's just book format that did that and took us a little bit by surprise. But in the end, it's good, because then you're not fooled about him attending to the to the picture. You can tell quite clearly that he's attending to the picture rather than the print. I was rather interested in the two boys on their explanation of why the hole had disappeared in this picture. The first one was really they both understood it, I think, but the first one was quite clear in his explanation of it, even though he hadn't done quite so well on the test. Did you have questions?
Yes. The first boy, you asked him, when you got to the punctuation part of the test, you asked a question about you said something effective, it tells you when you're done.
Yes.
Now, that seemed to indicate that he
has the concept,
grasp of
right.
Period and so forth.
Right.
But I couldn't see on the other punctuation marks.
No. Well, in the when I first began, this is how children teach you things. When I first began this, I wanted to adhere to standardized test procedures. So I wanted to have easy items that everybody got right and difficult items which extended the best children. And that's really how the punctuation came into it. I expected for the what you call a period, I get my dialect right, that I expected for this that the child would tell me a stop or a full stop. But I found that while they had to be at school about a year before they got that, but the children who'd only been at school about 6 months were able to say, it tells you when you've said enough, or some functional definition of it, at which point I realized that I had to accept a functional definition, because he knew of it. And in relation to that, I thought the second boy's definition of the question mark was not too bad. Do you remember what he said? He says it's something like it tells you when you're excited, which meant that he was, what? I think he was interpreting an exclamation mark. I think somebody had pointed out, you know, the function of an exclamation mark, and I thought that was really quite an interesting answer that we got from. Hadn't got as far as a question mark yet, but he had this exclamation mark. I can imagine some of the early books that you share with children that put print, sometimes very big print and a big exclamation mark or something. He probably had some experience of that. Yes?
The first child didn't seem to be able to lay the book down for you to start reading. Do you just attribute that to being distracted by the crowd?
The second one, I think so. I can't tell. His other performance was so competent that I think he was just distracted, and I was a bit distracted as to what to do with it at that point, because I didn't want to overteach it. I didn't want to do it for him, and I was sure he could do it, but he was... I hadn't taken nearly as long, and this is probably important. Before you people came, I was sitting down with Millard here, and we were chatting, and he did me a picture, and we talked about things, and I had time to explain what you were and so on, and he was much more at ease. The second child, I had not taken sufficient time to get him established in the situation, and I suffered for it on the first item. I should have taken longer to establish rapport with him. In which case I'd give him the benefit of crediting it in passing him on the test. I wouldn't count that one against him, since he did so much that was in advance of that. But it's only really the first one or two items that you can take liberties like that with. Do we have any other problems?
Do you find that some of the children can read, some of the 5-year-olds that you use this test with?
Well, you see, the test is standardized for us at the end of the first year of instruction. You can give it to these other children, but it's really looking at the discrimination after they are reading, and whether they're reading with a visual analysis of letters and words and so on or not. So that it's not really designed for children who have no experience with reading. But on the other hand, we do have some 5-year-olds who come into school who can read. And after all, you only have to be able to read I, the or in, and here, and make. Now, make is perhaps a little, but the other ones come in the first vocabulary for most children in order to be able to tackle the first last item of the reorientation ones. The reorientation ones, you've got to be able to read, make, house, or hill, or yellow. So those words they perhaps wouldn't have had, but all the others they could pass one on the very first words that children tend to learn. So even though a child only knows 2 or 3 words, if he's using the appropriate strategies, he could score on those items, you see.
Yeah.
Has the content of the material, for example, going with beach and sand, and have you worked with children that would have never had that type of experience? Would that be a factor?
I think this must be a problem to people in the centre of the United States, for example. In New Zealand, it would be very rare for a child not to have contact with the beach, and that was the reason for I was trying to get a topic in New Zealand that would be sort of something that most children would have done. New Zealand children would have sat on the beach, dug a hole, watched the water coming in, and so on. I think it could be a problem to other children, and therefore it would act as a distractor. But it's not like a child having to read the content of the book. In that case, it would be more of a problem if he hadn't had the experience. In this case, it really is just the packaging within which we put the task.
And we heard you talk before about learning your letters within your name.
Mm-hmm.
You developed a puzzle. And you said so some of that name starts in children's drawings, the paintings you can see. Have you tried to standardize that early development in the drawings itself, movement from drawings into letters?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is that's about where we are now. The goal of the whole was to detect children who were failing much earlier than we were able to do by standardized tests. And standardized tests really wouldn't measure the low progress children until they've been at school for 2 years. So we wanted to detect them earlier, and we wanted teachers to get on to helping the failing child. But of course, in New Zealand, because they enter at 5, we have this tradition of not forcing the child, not pushing him, letting him come in his own time. And so there's a strong resistance to doing any detecting work before you've given him his chance to survive. I say before you've given him his chance to fail. So this was then designed to catch them after the first year. But now it's the teachers who are saying to us, all right, I can see he hasn't got his directional behavior, he's not done the visual learning, he's not doing the left to right, hasn't got the concepts. Now I want to be able to tell my teachers of those children who are much younger than that how they can watch for this and build it into their... So now the teachers are looking for it. We're beginning to devise some more standardized setup for this. But it's difficult because of the diversity. You saw a difference here. The closer you go to the beginning of school, the more diverse the children's responses are, I believe. I think what the first year's teaching does is to standardize the diversity of school entrance so that you can teach them in a group. And it's more difficult, but we are looking at it closer to the beginning. It's harder to say things for teachers at that very beginning stage that will be more or less true for most children. They're just so different because their home experiences have been, preschool experiences have been different. I've enjoyed these questions. We have some more. Yes.
I just wanted to ask you one question. How would you interpret the missing of the internal inside the words, such as in made and held, by a child who is actually reading the text himself?
I don't find this any problem because I think there's a lot of material in research on reading which shows that from error behavior, you find that children tend to attend first. Well, even in searching a word, experienced readers tend to attend first to the beginning of a word, then to the end of the word, and finally to the middle of the word. So as long as the child's techniques of attending to the beginning and the end get him by and don't present him with any problems, there's no motivation to attend to the middle of the words. It's only when the task he has to be more discriminating that he has to take notice of them. And I think that that's a normal progression. And that's why they're in that order in my test. I also think that at this stage, I know this is true, that it's easier to discriminate the first and last letters because they have a space around them, which makes it's not so hard to focus on them. Whereas the letters embedded in the middle of the word, that's a slightly harder visual discrimination task. We've had some good questions, but I think we might have finished them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've been viewing you on the
Oh, you have.
monitors in
How unlucky for you.
a marvelous teaching material. Thank all of you for being such wonderful participants too.
Yeah. Even for distracting the second subject, because that gave me a chance to extend my capacity to hold his attention.